So reading from Srila Prabhupada Leela Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Chant Hare Krishna and fight. When Srila Prabhupada asked for news of ISKCON's activities in the movement in America, in the West, Rameshwar gave the latest details of how the Krishna consciousness movement in America was being attacked in the courts and press as a psychologically dangerous brainwashing cult. Srila Prabhupada was already aware of this. It was in fact the conspiracy he had referred to on his morning walk. An anti-cult movement was now aggressively active and lumping the Hare Krishna movement in with other new movements. Srila Prabhupada was well aware of the deprogrammers' kidnapping of devotees and intensively coercing them, and he had shown that he was not intimidated by the attack. He assured the devotees that Krishna would protect them and that the outcome would ultimately be in their favor. The most significant battle, one that concerned Srila Prabhupada for several months, was a legal case in New York where the temple president, Adhoksaja Swami, was being charged with employing mind control to keep the devotees in the temple. The parents of two adult devotees had pressed charges after hired deprogrammers had failed to break the two devotees' determination for Krishna consciousness. In a spirit of anti-cult crusade, an assistant attorney general was prosecuting using all legal and governmental facilities at his disposal. Although civil libertarians were outraged and assured the devotees that the opposition could never win, the implications of the case were fearful nevertheless. The case challenged the very right of the Hare Krishna movement to exist as a bona fide religion and challenged the right of adult devotees to remain in the movement against the wishes of their parents. Also at issue was whether members of the Hare Krishna movement were members of their own choosing or were being kept in the movement by psychological manipulation, brainwashing. When Srila Prabhupada had first heard of this case, his reply in a letter from Vrindavan had been a clarion call to battle against the forces of illusion. Regarding this point about whether our movement is bona fide, you can use the following arguments. Bhagavad Gita has got so many editions. Our books are older than the Bible. In India there are millions of Krishna temples. Let the judges and juries read our books and take the opinion of learned scholars and professors. Regarding the second point about the parents' jurisdiction over their children, here are some suggestions. Do the parents like that their children become hippies? Why don't they stop? Do the parents like that their children become involved in prostitution and intoxication? Why don't they stop this? They are now feeling the weight of this movement. Formerly they thought, these people come and go, but now they see we are staying. Now we have set fire. It will go on. It cannot be stopped. You can bring big fire brigades, but the fire will act. The brainwash books are already there. Even if they stop externally, internally it will go on. Our first-class campaign is book distribution. Go house to house. The real fighting is now. Krishna will give you all protection. So chant Hare Krishna and fight. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the 5th canto, and it's chapter 11? 12. So we're starting, this is the start of chapter 12. And the chapter is entitled Conversation Between Maharaj Rahugan and Jad Bharat. Shishikoda Nitai Maya Pashashiki. Because Maharaj Rahugan was still doubtful, this is just the introduction to the chapter, about his enlightenment, he asked the Brahmin Jad Bharat to repeat his instructions and clarify ideas he could not understand. In this chapter, Maharaj Rahugan offers his respectful obeisances to Jad Bharat, who was concealing his real position. The king could understand by his speech how exalted and advanced he was in spiritual knowledge. He very much regretted his offence against him. Maharaj Rahugan was bitten by the serpent of ignorance, but was cured by the nectarian words of Jad Bharat. Later, because he was doubtful about the subjects discussed, he made further inquiries, one question after another. First, he wanted to be released from the offence he had committed at the lotus feet of Jad Bharat. Maharaj Rahugan was somewhat unhappy at not being able to grasp Jad Bharat's instructions, which were full of meaning that could not be understood by a materialistic person. Therefore, Jad Bharat repeated his instructions more clearly. He said that on the surface of the globe, all living entities, moving and unmoving, were but transformations of the earth in different ways. The king was very proud of his king's body, but that body was simply another transformation of the earth. Out of his false prestige, the king was misbehaving toward the palanquin carrier as a master toward a servant, and he was actually very unkind to other living entities. Consequently, King Rahugan was unfit to give protection to the citizens, and because he was ignorant, he was unfit to be counted among advanced philosophers. Everything in the material world is but a transformation of the earth. Although things have different names according to their transformations, actually the varieties are one and the same, and ultimately all these varieties are vanquished into atoms. Nothing is permanent in this material world. The variety of things and their distinctions are simply mental concoctions. The absolute truth is beyond illusion and is manifest in three features: impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ultimate realization of the absolute truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, called Vasudeva, by his devotees. Unless one is blessed with the dust from the feet of a pure devotee on his head, one cannot possibly become a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jad Bharat was told about his own previous birth and informed the king that by the grace of the Lord, he still remembered all the incidents of his past life. Due to the activities of his past life, Jad Bharat was being very cautious and was therefore assuming the characteristics of a deaf and dumb man to avoid mingling with the material world. Association with the material modes of nature is very powerful. The bad association of materialistic men can be avoided only in the association of devotees. In the association of devotees, one is given an opportunity to render devotional service in 9 different ways: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dashyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedam. Atmanivedam. In this way, the association of devotees, one can pass over material association, cross over the ocean of nescience, and return home back to Godhead. So text 1. Rahugana Uvacha Rahugana Uvacha Namo Namaha Kalana Vigrahaya Namo Namaha Kalana Vigrahaya Swarupa Tuchikrita Vigrahaya Swarupa Tuchikrita Vigrahaya Namo Vaduta Dvija Bandhu Linga Namo Vaduta Dvija Bandhu Linga Namo Vaduta Dvija Bandhu Linga Niguda Nityanu Bhavaya Tubhyam Niguda Nityan Anubhavaya Tubhyam Rahugana Uvacha Namo Namaha Karana Vigrahaya Swarupa Tuchikrita Vigrahaya Namo Vaduta Dvijabandhu Linga Niguda Nitya Anubhavaya Tubhyam Rahugana Uvacha Namo Namaha Kalana Vigrahaya Swarupa Tuchikrita Vigrahaya Namo Vaduta Dvijabandulinga Niguda Nitya Anubhavaya Tubhyam Bolo Rahugana Vacha Namo Namaha Karana Vigrahaya Swarupa Tuchikrita Vigrahaya Namo Vaduta Dvijabandulinga Niguda Nitya Anubhavaya Bhuvyam Rahugana Uvacha Namo Namaha Karana Vigrahaya Swarupa Tuchikrita Vigrahaya Namo Vaduta Dvijabandulinga Niguda Cha Anubhavya Tubhyam Rahugana Uvacha Namo Namaha Karana Vigrahaya Swarupa Tuchikrita Vigrahaya Namo Vaduta Dvijabandulinga Niguda Nitya Anubhavya Tubhyam Mataji Rahugana Uvacha Namo Namaha Karana Vigrahaya Swarupa Tuchikrita Vigrahaya Namo Vaduta Dvijabandulinga Niguda Nitya Anubhavya Tubhyam Rahugana Uvacha King Rahugana said Namaha, my respectful obeisances. Namaha, obeisances. Karana Vigrahaya, to those whose body emanates from the Supreme Person, the cause of all causes. Swarup Tuchikrita Vigrahaya, one who has completely removed all the contradictions of the scriptures by manifesting his true self. Namaha, respectful obeisances. Avaduta, O Master of all mystic power. Dvijabandulinga, by the characteristics of a person born in a Brahmin family but not executing the duties of a Brahmin.
By the characteristics of a person born in a Brahmin family but not executing the duties of a Brahmin.
Niguda, covered. Nitya Anubhavaya, to him whose eternal self-realization. Tubhyam, to you. Translation, O King Rahugana said, O most exalted personality, you are not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By the influence of your true self, all kinds of contradictions in the Shastras have been removed. In the dress of a Brahmin, you are hiding your transcendental blissful position. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Prabhupada Prabhupada Ki Jai. From the Brahma Samhita we understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes. Surupa Karana Karanam. Rishabdev was the direct incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. His son, Bharat Maharaj, was now acting as the Brahmin, Jad Bharat, had received his body from the cause of all causes. Therefore he is addressed as Karana Vigrahaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhastam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tada Swapatam Tikam. Well, most Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet. So it's interesting that Bharat Maharaj was now acting as Jad Bharat, and Bharat Maharaj was the son of Rishabdev, the direct incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, very special personality. I'm not sure if the king was aware of that, but he was certainly aware that he was a very exalted personality, and so the king starts from a platform of remorse. He's remorseful that he's behaved in such a way, and he's hoping that his offence can be cleared, and that then he can show proper respect. So you can see the culture that was present, in those days, and we're doing this online course now on caring for devotees. So if the culture is there, then even if people at times go off the beaten track, then at least we know there is a beaten track to go off from. But if there's not even a beaten track and everyone's just off and no one even knows they're off, because that becomes the new culture. Just like at one time we understood what art was. Art was to glorify the beauty of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then it degraded down into, I saw one recently selling for, it was like in the millions, and it looked like someone had got a can of spaghetti and just thrown it on the canvas. And it wasn't just like going for a few 100,000, it was going for like serious money. Some gallery, I think it was in New York, like 100 million or something, So art has lost, you talk about going off the beaten track. And the same with language, we've been reading in the Sanskrit, Dvijabandhu Linga, and then there's so much connotation in the word, and then there can be other words which, you'd read previously that the word meant this, but in this context it means this. So a whole nuance, and you would only really know that by following in a chain of teachers that were very elevated and were able to perceive the nuance of the Sanskrit word used in this context, would therefore indicate it meant this more than it usually means when it's normally taken as this. So that's a very refined language, isn't it? And things are degrading now. It says at the end of Kali Yuga there won't be a language. People will just be grunting because they won't. What like the old caveman, right? He goes into the cave, bangs the woman on the head with the club, and then drags her out by the hair. There's not much language required, is there, for eating, mating, sleeping, defending. So if the language is not there to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead and spread His glories, then why do you need a fancy language? You can just that's all you really need, isn't it, to get the message across? A quick and then smack them on the head with a club, and that's a conversation finished. So things are becoming more degraded, and so the challenge is for us to understand the philosophy, practice, implement, and then build a culture so that this becomes our legacy, so that when we're all dead and gone, maybe some sooner than others, that will continue on. The momentum will continue on and expand more and more. So that's the challenge. And Srila Prabhupada saying, well, it is already going to happen, just fight and just do the best that you can, and everything will take place. So it's interesting we just recently had the appearance of Lord Ramachandra, and I was reflecting back on that whole pastime of how Lord Ram is fighting what seemed inconceivable odds, overwhelming odds, but all the monkey warriors, although they weren't very qualified, the same as the Rakshasas in terms of fighting skills and weaponry, they were prepared to just lay down their lives for Lord Ram. So it was a story of valor and integrity and determination and faith that eventually they'd win. And even though they were falling by the thousands all around and it looked like it wasn't going to happen, suddenly Lord Ram arranged for all these monkey warriors to come back alive and come out of the water and continue on. So it's a wonderful pastime of how that we can reflect on. Sometimes we see there's difficulties and devotees seem to have fallen away from the path. But Lord Ram doesn't forget. A pious man never forgets any good that's done for him. So any service rendered, and there's been a lot of service rendered here and in all the different temples in ISKCON. So if there's some difficulty along the way, if they're trying, then Lord Ramachandra's got their back. And what he does between now and that devotee leaving his body is something that we're not able to always immediately appreciate. Any questions or comments?
Question now. Maharaj Ruhuganam's on the introduction.
Actually, it's described that Jadbharaj was informing Maharaj Ruhugana that all the bodies of the living entities are just transformations of earth.
Oh, yeah.
And that the king shouldn't be concerned about his own body at the expense of other living entities.
Yeah.
However, we also hear Srila Prabhupada from time to time quotes the verse that all living entities are food, one living entity is food for another.
Yeah.
And Maharaj, Jadbharat was an avadut, so he didn't have to eat, he didn't have to worry about where his food was coming from. But as long as we're growing food, then we're going to be killing living entities on the earth. How do we, to what extent do we pursue ahimsa? Because if we really pursue ahimsa to the ultimate limit, then we won't have any time for self-realization. So how do we balance, caring for all living entities, creating a culture of non-violence with, how do we balance that with leaving sufficient time and energy for cultivating self-realization?
So if I understood the question correctly, if we're trying to become aware of this principle that we're all dust and that all our bodies are the same, then how do we think we have the right to kill other living entities to maintain our own lives? So there's if we really want to follow the principle absolutely of not killing any other living entities, then everyone should just hold their breath right now and then just suffocate, and we'll all die. So obviously we don't want to do that. So then the other alternative is to find inaction in action. Is to find out what is the path that we can tread, where we can perform activity and there won't be any reaction. And you can do it through the impersonal path, which is very problematic and difficult to do, or you can do it through the yogic path, which is again very difficult to do. the karma. You could do the karma yoga path, where you sacrifice the results of your activities, but that still implicates you to some degree. Or you could do the bhakti path, where you aspire to do everything for the pleasure of Krishna, and then in the service of Krishna. If something gets trampled on or something gets breathed in, then that's all part of the offering to Krishna, and Krishna kindly accepts the offering. Then everything becomes sanctified, and the action so then the action becomes absolved. And the example is given of fire, because there's 8 material elements, and fire is considered the purest, because you can contaminate water, you can contaminate earth, you can contaminate the ether, but you can't contaminate fire. Whatever you put in fire, fire burns through out of it. It still comes out the same, pure fire. So fire is used as a way of cleansing of impurity. So in the different yugas, there was different fires. There was literally the fire of sacrifice, and then the fire of deity worship, and then the fire of meditation refers to the Bhagavad Gita, offering into the fire of the mind. And in Kali Yuga, the fire is the vibration of Harinam, Sankirtan, that vibration. If that vibration is always present, then whatever is going on is burnt up in the fire of Harinam. So everything should be to the aim of maintaining the vibration, keeping the vibration going. So throughout the day, all the time, Harinam is on our lips. All the time that we're speaking and interacting with people is to encourage them to experience Harinam for themselves. And so in this way, as long as that fire of Harinam is going on, then wherever imperfections and impurities, and there's a beautiful verse by Bali Maharaj where he's saying they're performing, he says whatever the activity may be, whatever you're doing, wherever imperfections, wherever irregularity in the observance of the regulative principles there may be, wherever imperfections may be there, everything is perfect if it is accompanied with the chanting of the holy name. So if you stand on a well, or you have to evict some spiders from the little nest, and you're chanting the holy name of the Lord, or whatever it is you're doing as you're going about your duties, then that fire is burning up. And it's not that you're going out of your way to cause any inconvenience to any living entities. Your main focus is that you're chanting the holy name, and then if along the way something happens, then it's interesting, isn't it, that Bhagavad Gita, Krishna orchestrates a whole scenario to take place to put Arjuna into such a frame of mind that when he goes on the battlefield, he goes through a whole needle formation of soldiers, which takes from the rising of the sun to the setting of the sun for him to annihilate, just wholesale mass slaughter from the time the sun rises to the time the sun sets. He puts Arjuna into such a frame of mind that he's just ruthlessly hacking his way through millions and millions of soldiers throughout the entire day. So Krishna's plan can seem devastating and overwhelming. Arjuna became overwhelmed when he saw what Krishna was going to do. When Krishna showed him the universal form, and he saw the extent of the devastation that was going to take place, Arjuna became afraid. So we just have to act according to Krishna's will, follow the line of authority, and be compliant, and then be an instrument in Krishna's hand. And whatever he wants us to do, then we do that, and then whatever irregularity is there or imperfection is there, that is absolved by the fire of yoga.
Very much. That's a very nice answer. I was thinking it's very good. It's a nice answer because it actually it puts the responsibility on us individually to follow advice like Balinraj to always be chanting the holy name. I was just thinking because when I was doing some gardening recently, and I was just, I realised I was killing some worms.
Hopefully it wasn't a needle formation. From some.
Then I remembered that I should be chanting, but I thought, well, okay, I'm chanting now, but what about those worms I killed 5 minutes ago?
Well, that's the nature of the holy names, because the holy name is absolute. See, we're restricted right now by the dimension of time, but the holy name isn't. So if you throw a pebble in the pond, Einstein explained actually that time is the surface of the pond, and if you throw a brick into it, then you can feel the ripples from all around the pond. In the same way, if you drop a bomb in Hiroshima, then the ripples that are sent out are felt in the future, at the moment of impact, and before it took place. But because we're situated here on the pond, we only experience it as we come up to it, you see. So the nature of the holy name is it's like dropping an atom bomb on the material energy, and those ripples go out, and then they free the reactions or activities that are going to be performed in the future, that are being performed right now, and that have been performed in the past. So we tend to be like very just specific with the moment, We're very much and the moment means that there's a future and there's past. But Bhakti Thakur says you can become free from all anarthas and arguments and doubts by just becoming situated in the eternal present. That there is no past and there is no future. It's just the eternal now. And we're only able to experience the eternal now in we have a small window, and we're seeing what's going on right now, and then suddenly right now is the past, or right now is about to occupy the future. But if you could break free from that, then you would see, well actually no, that's just my small window, but actually the moment I'm experiencing now is the same moment I experienced at the moment of birth, and it will be the same moment I experience at the moment of death. Because there is no such thing as time on the absolute platform. Everything is just now. And the now always was and always will be. And we're confined right now to a very crippled and compromised perception of what reality is. And the more we can become free from the constraints of time and become situated more in the eternal present, automatically that will absolve us all the doubts. And doubts lead to arguments, and arguments lead to anarthas. So if you have any doubts or arguments, if you follow it through, you'll find that that's justifying some anartha, some unwanted thing that's there. So in one fell swoop, you can become free of all those complications by just becoming aware of the eternal present. Because the eternal present means that there's no, when you're looking at Krishna, you're not wondering, I wonder when he got his dhoti, I wonder when someone put those marks on his feet, well, I wonder when someone, he's just always like that. Everything is all there, the grass, the blue sky, the cow making milk, everything is just, there was ever a time when it wasn't like that, or in the future that it ever won't be. That's just, and it's a question of submissively accepting that. And trying to relieve ourselves of the constraints of the intellectual platform, which is so much based upon analysis in terms of past, present and future. Because past, present and future always implies the question, but when did that happen? And when will that stop? But when did that happen? And when will that stop? But when did that happen? So you see the little bee going on the flower, and then the question, well, what happened before the bee evolved, and what happened before the flower evolved? But the problem with that is the bee and the flower had to evolve at the same time, because it's symbiotic. You don't have a bee without a flower. Just like for a clock to work, all the cogwheels in the mechanism have to exist at the same time. You can't have half a clock that tells the time slowly, and it's waiting for a few more cogwheels to come around so that it can tell the time a bit quicker. It's either a clock with all the cogwheels, or it's not a clock. It doesn't function. So it's symbiotic, all the parts have to be there simultaneously. And so because we see the nature of the creation around us as everything is interdependent, so evolution doesn't really hold water when we look at it like that, because everything would have to have evolved on the same day, at the same moment. There is a fish actually, it's an orange fish, and it lets blue fish swim into its mouth. It's a big fish, and it looks quite nasty. It's got very jagged teeth, and it looks like if you put your hand in there, even if your hand was painted blue, that would be its breakfast. But somehow or other, all the fish had a board meeting, and it was decided that the orange one would not eat the blue fish. So all the blue fish told all the other blue fish, "It's okay, guys, we're blue." And they told the blue fish, "You better watch out, because he's not agreed if you go in. But we're okay, we can go in and we can nibble away all the bits in between his teeth." And he's found that saves him a fortune on dentist bills. We don't get eaten. He keeps his teeth clean. We get fed. Everything's happy. It's a symbiotic relationship. So what it's asking in this book, Nature's IQ, is how did that come about? On what day was that implemented? When did they decide that was going to be the case? How could you evolve to that? How could you bring that about? So the easiest thing is just to accept, well, that's the way it is. That's the way nature's arranged it, and that's how it is. And that's what people are doing in the spiritual world. They're not going around trying to figure things out. They're just overawed at how beautiful and perfect and complete everything is, you see. So that's the kind of consciousness that we're trying to transfer to. We're in a transitional stage right now, so we want to shed ourselves of constraints which justify an artist and just become situated in the eternal present.
It's interesting about the nature of present in the spiritual world. I just read a few things about in relationship with time. When you meet Krishna, even if you're there eternally, and you meet Krishna the next day, it's like a meeting for the first time. It's like so exciting and fresh. And like for us as well, we have this Mangalarati morning program that we're doing day after day, month after month, year after year. But we want to come to the point, and there is a certain point, of at least when you reach some nishta, that it's so fresh and exciting. It's like as if you're doing for the first time, meeting the deities, chanting the holy name, doing the arati. Then you're on a threshold of entering spiritual world, and become so fresh.
That's right, Atmaka Bhakti, isn't it? That's spontaneous devotional service. Is that you're experiencing an intense excitement and relish in whatever it is that you're doing in connection with Krishna. And Vaidhi is you're doing it because you have to do it out of duty, obligation. And so duty and obligation is okay as a precursor, but it's like Arjuna. He could have fought the battle out of duty and obligation, because Krishna could have said to him, "Well, how have these impurities come upon you? They're not befitting, you're behaving in an outright, your enemies are going to," and that was all based on duty and obligation. But then eventually he instilled within Arjuna such an enthusiasm to want to be compliant with his will, and he was experiencing such a joy and excitement and a privilege in being chosen to perform the task ahead of him, that it went from duty and obligation to being thrilled and inspired to want to do it. So that's what we want to be like. And then other people, when they come in contact with us, they'll be, what's going on? It'll be like a festival atmosphere. It'll be exciting.
I didn't really understand a lot of what you were talking about, but but I'm sure many devotees can understand it, especially devotees.
It's like time is, you see, time, if you're sitting on a train and the guy goes past, sometimes you have these signs on these, they're like on a wooden thing, and they put there, some message, line 5 is out of action because of repairs, and then suddenly the porter will pick it up and put it on his shoulder, and he walks past, and you're on the train, and you don't see the porter, you just see the sign, you think, oh great, we're off, and you actually can feel the train let you see the sign, thank goodness for that. And then suddenly you realise, oh no, nothing else has moved, he's just gone past with the sign. So time gives you the sensation that the train is moving, but it isn't, it's stationary, it doesn't go anywhere. It's just what happens is little atoms are flying past you and turning into wrinkles, and your skin starts hanging off you, and everything starts to sag, and you're thinking, oh, I'm getting old now. But it's not, just things are going past the window.
The question was, when you're describing the different types of yoga and how you can attempt to nullify reactions, but they're all very difficult. But then you said putting back to yoga, then there's no reaction. So that generally we think that means there's no reaction for ourselves, that we don't get a reaction. But is it also the case that there's no reaction for all of the other living entities that we're interacting with in the course of performing back to yoga? Is it the case that there's no reaction there?
Well, no reaction and reaction are both absolutes. So whether there's absolutely no reaction or whether there's absolutely reaction, because we're in an intermediate stage, we're transitioning to become, for a pure devotee and for a practicing devotee, then the ratio of action and reaction will be different. You see. We're trying to come to the point of becoming completely. Srila Prabhupada comes off the airport. It's just businessmen. They've never been to church. They can't remember the last time they were at church. And they've gone, it's the last thing on their mind. All the devotees are there, and they're so excited. Prabhupada's coming in. So the Prabhupada was glowing. To the devotees are paying their obeisance, and these businessmen are just like, and the devotees stand up. They see Srila Prabhupada and they just start crying, And I don't know that it was all the businessmen, but I know at least one of them. One of the businessmen started crying. He doesn't even know what's going on, and he just got hit with this wave of emotion, and he started crying. So I don't know the specific amount of reaction and inaction and action that was going on there, and how many living entities let his tears maybe collided with us, went down the face of his cheek and terminated their life prematurely, and how much reaction was there. But certainly it's an auspicious step toward the light. When the sun is rising, then you don't see the sun immediately, you just see the light, and you know that the daytime has come. So in the beginning of Harinam, we're not seeing that the name is actually Krishna. We're not directly focused just yet on the sun, but we're becoming illuminated. The forest path is starting to become a little clearer, and we're starting to see things a little better. So that's an intermediate stage, potentially. We know that whatever reaction we're getting now is reduced. It's a token, and we know that in due course it will be. And I was listening to, I was reading Ram Guru, Preethu's wife, had done a course on self-care, and she said a really interesting thing. And she was saying we're devotee care workers, but we're not welfare workers, we're not social workers. So our job description is different. We're not there to save people. People have got their unique relationship with Krishna, their unique karma that they have to undergo, and their own particular process, which is in progress. And if you interfere and try and save the person, then you disempower that process from taking place, and you disempower yourself because you're not aligning with what Krishna wants to happen, you see, his plan for the particular living entity. So
what do you mean by save the person? What do you mean by save them?
So yeah, and that's another thing as well. Yeah, you may misunderstand. Say the person's going through a lot of pain, and you think I'll save them, and you pump them full of morphine, so they're not going through any pain anymore. And you think I've saved them, no pain anymore. But what was the lesson that they had to learn? What is going on between them? So we have to be careful that we don't interfere, and we understand what it means to take care of somebody. A carer is more like a coach. He's encouraging the person, he's reflecting on what the person is saying, and being empathic in his listening, and that's helping the person to heal by doing that, you see. So we have to have a clear understanding of what it is that we are, what our job description is, what saving a person means, and what showing care for the person means. If it just becomes a mundane thing, and then you go around crucifying yourself to help other people feel like, well, I thought I was in pain, but wow, when I look at what he's going through, mine is nothing. That's not how you're going to help somebody. You don't help yourself, you don't help the person either. Empathic is that you don't sympathize with the person, because there was one person that had a really, really bad cancer. She was in a lot of pain. She said the last thing she wanted was all her friends and relatives to come round, because then they were in pain, seeing how much she was in pain, which made her feel even worse. Not only was she suffering, but she was making everybody who loved her suffer as well. So she asked another friend to come round. She said, I want you to come round because you'll just connect with me, and you'll just be with me, and you won't feel sad about me, and then I won't feel sad about myself, and that'll give me the strength to deal with this, So empathic listening is connecting with people, really being with them and really making them feel that you understand and accept them. And then that's a big relief in itself. Sometimes if people are very emotional, the last thing they want is a solution. They're revealing everything to you, and then you say, well, that's okay, you just tell him to get lost. Slap that one in the face and hit him on the head with a Bhagavad Gita hardcover. Everything will be fine. That wasn't really what I wanted. I didn't really want a solution. I just wanted you to be with me and see the pain that acknowledge the pain and suffering they're experiencing. And then as soon as that happens, the problem shares a problem halved, which the person starts to feel he's not alone, you see. It's a big subject anyway, self-care and how to save people, how to rescue people. People have to see that you're satisfied and you're happy in your own practice of Krishna consciousness, that you're on solid ground. People like that. People like to see that people are confident and happy about what they're doing. If you're not, if you're saying you're on dry ground, but you're showing symptoms of a person who's drowning, then the person's, should I go towards him? He's throwing me a rope. Is he throwing me a rope so that I can get in the swamp with him? I mean, can you imagine that? A person's drowning and you're in the swamp at the side, and you say, don't worry, I'll save you. And the person's going down and he throws the rope, and eventually there's just two hands. Come on, it's okay, come on. And the person's, thinking, well, maybe he needs to get out of the swamp, save himself. And the person in the water who's drowning thinks, maybe if I pull the rope, it'll pull him out of the swamp. Maybe I can help him. And that just makes him drown even more. So,
it's just a couple of comments from Laura. One is about the time talking about the past and future. I suddenly had a thought that we shouldn't lament for the past or hanker for the future. Right now is what's important for the future.
Yeah. Yes.
That was about the time. And there's one more in a more recent comment. Yes, sometimes just having someone there with you makes such a difference. You're not asking them to help you, but just being there and listening is saving and helping.
Yeah. There was a person that was, he was very badly injured. Anyways, that's a bit gory actually. I can tell you later about it. It's a nice point. And yet, if we're not focused right now in what we're doing, if we're distracted by the future, we're distracted by the past, then it's depleted. And Krishna is saying Ekiha, not Ahushaka. Ahushaka is many branched. He's saying Ekiha. Just focus right now on what you're doing. I want you to fight, then just give everything to that. Don't worry about the outcome. Don't worry about what preceded. I want you to just fight. And so Arjuna, okay, if that's what you want, I'm prepared to do that. Firm and free from doubt. Firm, he says, I stand firm. Okay, I'll have to finish there because that's the load of wood coming for us or something. Krishna Govinda ki, Jai Baba ki.